It's 50 years since the first Redex Around Australia reliability trial. I wonder if you remember the very first one in 1953. Half a century later, a field of cars is setting off today as they embark on a 4-week run right around Australia. And joining me now from Fox Studios, where the engines are running, is Graham Wallis, the brains behind the anniversary trial. And it's a very good morning to him. G'day, Graham.
Hello.
Yes, Graham. I understand there's a predominance of Peugeot involved this year with the Peugeot Car Club.
That's right. We just thought we'd have a bit of a run around Australia to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Peugeot win, but things got a bit carried away, and we've ended up with lots and lots of cars, lots and lots of Peugeots, plus lots of other cars, and we've just seen the start, and there was about 10 people that had competed in 1953 altogether for a photo.
See, there are those of us who can remember going to the Cinetone News and seeing Jack Davey and Jelly Knight, Jack Murray and people like that, and I used to sit there and envy them and think, oh, wouldn't that be fabulous? And they've had a few variety bashes in the past, and I thought, gee, I would have liked to have gone on those, but because of work commitments I couldn't. But they do seem like a lot of fun. Are you going off on this one, Graham?
Oh, certainly. I'll be flat out. I've got to head off to Maitland as soon as I finish this interview with yourself. Yes. And we've got to sort of keep on with the events.
So where are you going to?
We're going to Maitland this afternoon. We're going down Ken Tubman Drive. It was named, of course, to commemorate Ken Tubman, the winner of 53.
Yeah, but where are you going to overall? Right around Australia?
Oh, yes.
You're going, what, from Townsville, Darwin, the whole bit?
Yeah, doing the lot. It's a bitumen now, of course, but we're going to have a few little diversions onto the gravel and come back through Canberra just to show the Canberra people the cars.
So who was the driver of the first winner of the Redex?
It was Ken Tubman.
Right. Oh, you told me that, didn't you? Yeah. And, of course, he was driving a Peugeot, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, you told me that. What are the chances of the Holdens and the Fords of taking this one out?
Oh, a reasonable chance. We've got Ken Harper, he's a very, very well-known rally driver. He ran the Ford Works team in the 60s, and he drove Australia's first Porsche in 53, and he's in a V8 Mustang, so he's got pretty good chances.
This is not going to be as dangerous, I suppose, as the rally that claimed the life of Possum born in New Zealand.
No, that's right. It's what's called a touring road event. It's all under CAM's rules, and the brief for those events basically is you do all your competing on the public property and closed roads, hill climbs, circuits, and you just do the driving on the road to get from point A to point B.
How long did the Redex trial last for?
It lasted, I think it was 2 weeks back in 53. But we're
how many years did it last?
Oh, sorry, 53, 54 and 55.
Only 3 years?
Yes.
What did it come after that? The Ampol Rally, was it?
Yes, Ampol and Mobil, when Redex stepped out, they both vied to take it over. And there was quite a bit of acrimony about all that. Mobil sort of sided with CAMS, and Ampol went out on their own. And for 3 years, they ran 2 events a year. Quite successful events, but after this, of course, I think the public had had their fill. And it wasn't until 64 that the next Ampol was run.
How many cars entered this year?
This year we've got 85.
Gee.
Yeah.
I understand Stan Zemanek isn't driving because he's worrying about the high winds and waves, but anyway, I try to say Stan, it's nothing to do with yachts. But anyway.
I'm from Melbourne, so I don't know much about Stan.
Don't you? Really? You didn't listen to 3AW? Okay.
No,
I'll pass
anybody else.
I'll pass it on to Stan.
Sorry about that.
He'll be devastated. Okay, thanks, Graham. Bye. Graham Wallis there, organised with the 50th anniversary Redex trial. And it is a 50th anniversary. I don't think they're calling it the Redex, though. Live from Fox Studios, where the cars are setting off for their run around Australia.
It's 16 minutes past 1. Look, the other thing we're going to talk about, a little bit of a historical session to begin with. I'm sure this will spark memories.
Officials promised no car would survive without points lost, and the roads have taken care of it. If you can call them roads, this is really rugged. Imagine trying to average more than 40 over it. It's the world's toughest car trial, and then some. Creek beds to dust, and dust to the long, dry grass. Trial leader Lottie Whitehead's Volkswagen still going like a rocket. Look at this one. Must have been hit by a rocket. Car 44's certainly taken a dropping. It's turned over, but is still going strong when they reach Perth. Tough cars, iron men.
A little from the 1955 Redex trial. Dave Mark, formerly of 702, now the ABC Social History Unit, is doing a doco on the Redex. He's looking for a few contacts, a few stories and that sort of thing, so we thought we'd help him out. Helpful station that we are. Plus, we love the Redex trial. It is such a fantastic moment in Australian history. It's the 50th anniversary of the first, and they're staging a recreation in just a few weeks' time. So, look, if you can help Dave out with a contact or two or a tale or two of being in the Redex or seeing the Redex, do feel free to give us a call. 8331,000 is the number. Oh, they were tough then, Dave. Tough roads.
They were indeed. It's a cheap research organisation, this was. It's fantastic. But look, for those who don't know about Redex, there were 3 reliability trials sponsored by a company called Redex, which by all accounts is still available. It's an upper engine lubricant. And an English chap called Red Shepherd came out to Australia in the early 1950s, and he was a bit of a motoring buff, but he also wanted to put his product on the map. So he had this idea, why don't we have a reliability trial, drive cars around Australia and see which ones hold up. So it wasn't a race, it was meant to be, you know, with the Humbers outlast the Holdens, who would outlast the Fords or the Peugeots or the Vauxhalls. And
or the Volkswagen. What is a Volkswagen?
What is a Volkswagen? And so the first one, as you said, was held 50 years ago in 1953, 6,500 miles. So they left Moore Park in Sydney, wound their way up to Darwin, down through Alice Springs to Adelaide and back to Sydney. And it took about 2 weeks, and it captured the imagination. There were 50,000 people who saw the cars leave at Moore Park, and people say another 200,000 people, you know, lining the routes of Sydney to see these cars. And the whole way along, it just generated a huge amount of interest. And this is one of the things I'm really interested in, because I suppose at the time, the post-war years, Australia was becoming a bit more affluent. Cars were becoming a bit cheaper. The first Holden, I believe, came out of production, I think it was 1949. And so there was a huge interest in cars, and the Redex was a way for people to kind of see how their car was going. How did the Holdens go against the Peugeot? So maybe, James, your father had a Peugeot and he was interested to see how the neighbour's Holden went and so on, so they could kind of compete with each other.
Yeah.
And maybe decide which car they were going to buy if they were in the market for one.
It did all of that. 8331,000 is the number. If you've got any observations, you might recall the Redex trial. You might recall the sort of, I suppose, the attitude of the time and the way in which it seems, you know, in some ways does our contemporary car culture all stem from those days? Is that where our fascination with it begins? 8331,000 is our number. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to hear your stories. Talking with Dave Mark, who's putting together a documentary for ABC Radio on this very event. It also opened up Australianised to the rest of Australia. You know, we tended to be a little bit insular, a bit Sydney, Melbourne. We're an urban culture. Suddenly, you know, you were sitting in your Sydney Sound News Theatre, seeing the outback and going, my God, look at that.
Yeah, the cars driving to, you know, Tennant Creek and Mount Isa and all that sort of thing. And cars weren't used for long-distance touring. The car perhaps in those days was more the sort of thing you might have taken on Sunday picnics, but you weren't certainly going to drive from Sydney to Brisbane for a holiday, or let alone sort of Sydney to Darwin or anything like that. So as you say, these people were going into the complete unknown, and the images of their country was being brought back to them by the Sydney Sound cameras and so on.
I love the footage.
It's fantastic.
Whenever it comes up, I love the black and white footage of a Peugeot 203 or a Ford Custom Line going through back Australia in the 50s. Looks fantastic.
And these were just the stock standard cars that you could you buy at a dealer, and so that was very much part of the test. How are they going to go on these pretty appalling roads? You know,
if you can call them roads, David.
That's right.
We got a little more to play for us?
Indeed.
1953 Redex.
This is the beginning of the 1953 trial, and you'll hear the commentator talking about how many people are seeing off the cars.
In driving rain, our camera crew gets ahead of the field with no intention of photographing until the cars arrive in Brisbane, 650 miles away on the end of the first leg. But we leave a crew behind to cover the start. The atmosphere's electric, excitement keen. Away goes number 1, a pre-war Chrysler driven by E. Hoy of Victoria. It's 2:50 p.m. and he is due in Brisbane at 9:32 tomorrow morning. Hoy lost 30 points at the start for being 30 minutes late reporting. Starting at 3-minute intervals, there goes Keith Fallon of Queensland in a Morris Minor. It pays to remember at this stage that this is a reliability trial, not a race. White-haired Red Shepherd, Redex manager, is sponsor and official starter. Next, Victorian Bill Wagger in a Ford Custom. Yes, the trial's intended to prove a searching test of reliability and endurance. 250,000 people see them go.
Yes, it's not a race. It pays to remember that. We're talking about the Redex trials, the 1950s. 8331,000 is the number if you've got tales for us. Dave Mark doing a... well, look, I don't think it's cheap research. I think it's valuable use of the ABC's resources and our ability to contact all sorts of people. Doug?
Yo!
Yeah, what do you recall, Doug?
Well, in those days, I was just kicking off as a motor mechanic, and I do remember the Gelignite Jack Murray Grey Ghost.
Yep.
But there was a little anecdote that came from that when he used to run around the countryside throwing bits of gelignite everywhere. But at one stage he rolled his car and it was on its roof, and he had to wait for assistance to come around to right it. And he did say, "Oh well, while it's up here, we'll adjust the brakes."
And so he did?
Sorry?
And so did he?
Yes. Well, apparently.
Right.
I don't know whether he could get the tools out of the boot or not, but
right.
Yeah,
right.
that was his statement, and that was the kind of bravado that these fellows had. Nothing would get in their road and they wouldn't waste an opportunity.
Yeah.
One of my recollections.
Doug, I was just wondering, did you go out and see the cars at any time?
I saw them leaving.
And tell me how was there much interest in the community? Why did you go down to see the cars?
Well, just starting in the mechanical game myself, yes, I was certainly interested in seeing which cars would stand up to the rugged terrain.
Doug, thanks for your call. Nice to hear from you. 833-1000 is our number. Ron?
Good afternoon.
What did you do, Ron?
Let's say for 50 years ago, but what I recall of it, I repaired it was either the winner or the runner-up, a Peugeot that was sponsored by Marshall Motors, and it cracked in the wheel arch above the rear suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to get it repaired so as they could resell it. So I remember that, repairing that Peugeot.
So you repaired it when it came back to Sydney?
Yep.
What sort of nick was it in apart from that?
Oh, pretty good. It was just funny that it cracked through the chassis rails and the wheel arch straight up on both sides, and we had to weld it all back together again.
Gee, Peugeot kept that quiet, didn't they?
Well, I suppose they did, yeah. But it'd been over some pretty rough roads.
And was there a lot of interest in the car when it was back in the garage?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a pretty big deal at the time.
It was a celebrity car.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why do you think it was? Why were people so interested in this?
Australians love motor cars in just about any form. I mean, I hate going to Bathurst, but you just watch the people go up and watch the cars run round at Bathurst. Anybody that's worked on cars probably stay away, but other people, the rev heads, they love it.
Nation of rev heads. Ron, thank you very much. We are worshipping the rev head this afternoon, or the early start of the rev head.
But you know, it's not. It couldn't have been just the rev heads in 1953 because there were so many people who went out and saw the cars in wherever the cars went. So I was talking to someone who was a bit of a buff recently, and he sort of likened it to the Olympic torch that came around 3 years ago when so many people came out, and he said that, you know, there were more. There were huge numbers. So it couldn't have just been those who were only petrol heads. There must have been a more general interest in it.
I wonder if it was one of the first events to link Australia in that way, so that if you were in Tennant Creek, you suddenly felt connected to a national event in a way that, you know, the cricket might have been being played, but it was always being played in Sydney or Melbourne. Here it was coming to your town.
And I'm told that in subsequent years there was a bit of there was always a great deal of angst if it didn't go through your town because you wanted to go there. The Queen toured Australia that year, and that might have been a similar thing, but certainly nothing before it had ever gone around Australia.
See, now, why they didn't bring the Queen out?
That's right.
Stick her in a Ford Custom
Humber
line.
Super Snipe.
A Humber Super Snipe. You know, best of British engineering. The new Morris Minor, perhaps, would have been terrific promotion. Charles?
Yeah.
What do you recall?
I was, this is probably around about the 80s. The type of people that were actually on the, I was working in the hotels up in the Northern Territory at the time. And apparently there was an internal or a competition within the crews whereby they had to pay X amount of dollars for every rule or law that they broke. So if someone broke a traffic fine, broke the speed limit, they would have to pay, and they raised money for charity in that way.
Are you talking about the Redex trials of the 50s?
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay.
And that still happens today, apparently.
Right. Yeah, I'm not aware of that. Are you aware of that, Dave? Did they raise money for charity? Stuart, did it?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah,
No.
I hadn't heard that aspect of it, but Charles, thanks for letting us know. 833-1000 is our number as we discuss the early days of the Redex trials. 50 years ago, the first one headed off.
The awards secured in this trial by Humber Super Snipes included first, third and fourth in big car class. First for best performance by British car. Second in trial all classes, only 1 point 15 seconds behind the outright winner. 3 placings in first 9 all classes, 2nd, 7th and 9th. And it's well to remember that with cars still limping back to the finishing point weeks after the trial was over, that 5 Humber Super Snipes started and 5 finished. Truly, a fine performance by the Humber Super Snipe, built for the roads of the world.
That was a promotional film that Humber made after the 1953 trial, but I guess it goes to show, as today, if someone does well in a competition, that the trials were used to trying to persuade people that their car was the one that made the trip, made the distance, didn't break down, and so people should go out and buy a Humber Super Snipe.
I don't think we have quite the same relationship to the Subaru WRX. You know, winning Monte Carlo or something these days. There's, Paris to Dakar.
A car built for Australian conditions.
Built for Australian conditions to take on the roads of the world. Joan? Hello, Joan? No? Joan decided to... let me see if Joan's there. Joan?
Yes.
Sorry about that, Joan. Now, you recall motorbike trials.
Oh, yes. I think there were 2. They don't get as much... recognition as the cars. The cars were the ones that had the thinner sound following them around and everything. But they were very big, and they went from... these were the days when we still had motorcycle clubs, and they went from Sydney down cross-country, down through Victoria, South Australia, up through South Australia and back down through the middle, down through to Sydney.
Right, and what years were these?
It was the early 1950s.
Right.
And I know there was at least one woman went on one occasion, and, I can't remember anybody's name. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah. Do you remember watching them? Were you there?
Well, I knew the people I belonged. Do I have to admit that I was a member of a motorcycle club in my teens?
No, we love that. Fantastic. What sort of bike did you have?
Oh, I didn't.
You didn't even have one?
I was the pillion rider.
You just wanted to hang around with bikies?
Yeah, that's right.
Mate,
they were wonderful, and I remember this woman. She did the whole thing, and she had an accident at one point, and the men were terrific, and they had one man on either side from the club. Made sure she got to the next town and wasn't left behind and that sort of thing. And, there were all kinds of things. There were matchless and beezers, and I think there was only one Harley Davidson, in those days known as Charlie Davidson.
Joan, thank you for reminding us of that event. I hadn't actually heard of the motorbike trials, but thank you for letting us know. This is, we're marking the 50th anniversary of the Redex trial. In fact, the Peugeot Car Club's gone a little bit further. The Car Club of Victoria has organised a rerun of the event. Will be taking off from Moore Park, from the showgrounds, where the original headed off in 1953 in just a few weeks' time. Graham Wallis, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
You must be getting pretty excited.
Oh, yes, I'm getting so many phone calls. I had about 3 while I've been waiting for you, I think.
How many entries have you got?
We've got 87 entries.
Yep.
About 70 Peugeots, all pre-1970. 30 203s, I think, including some from overseas. And we've also got another 10 or 12 cars that are very special, most of these. A guy, Ken Harper, he drove Australia's first Porsche in the first event, and he's running a Mustang. We've got Ted Hoy, the guy that ran in the Chrysler, and he's coming back with the original car. So we do have a lot of people from the past as well, the Peugeots, yeah.
Are there a lot of the original cars still around? Were they treasured?
Not too many. We've got the Chrysler, which is entered. There is a Riley, which I'm trying to get along there. At the moment, I'm still working on the guy to get him there.
Right.
And I think we've got another car as well from 54, a Citroen, which is driven by Keith Fallon. He'll be turning up as well.
How much of the original route can you access today?
Oh, well, the original route really was just the highways, but the highways in those days were fairly rough.
Right.
So what we're going to do, though, we're running it under cams, and it will be what's called a touring road event. A lot of touring on the highways, but also lots of sub-events like hill climbs and motorcanas and things like this. But we do intend to do the old Horace stretch, which is now just a nice gravel road, and go past the guy that was there when he was, back in 53. Same guy will be there.
Same guy will be there?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, the photos we've been using for our publicity came out of his drawer. They've been there for 50 years.
Yeah. Graham, we just had a panel there to say that they had to weld one of the 203s back together.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one. Just as well it didn't happen in 55 because they were checking for that then.
Were they?
I guess they didn't check for it in 55.
Didn't check for it. So Peugeot's been operating under, false premises ever since.
They probably weren't aware of it, actually.
Graham, good luck with it.
Those 203s weren't too good for that. They were real H's, yeah.
Good luck with it.
Thanks
I'm
for
sure
that.
it's going to go very well.
Yeah, and Sunday here at Moore Park, for those who want to come down, Fox Studios.
Sunday, June
June the 22nd.
June 22nd.
And, from 9 o'clock through to 11. And we're going to have the Grey Ghost there, which is really a good thing, and lots of people from the past.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Nice to talk to you. Graham Wallis, one of the organisers of the recreation. David, if people want to tell you their tale, how do they get in touch with you?
They can call me here at the ABC on 8333 1391. 8333 1391. I'm particularly interested to talk to people who were very keen spectators and maybe they went out and bought their first Peugeot or Humber Super Snipe because they were so inspired. Any competitors too, I'm always happy to hear from you.
Dave, thanks for your time. Thanks for bringing it to us.
Thanks,
and good luck with it. Dave
Thank you very much.
From the ABC's History Unit, 8333 1391, if you want to help him out.
I can't have a guest without a theme. Good morning, David Brown.
Good day, Angela.
How's things with you?
Yeah, very well indeed.
Oh, that's good. Now, I did see the fascinating footage on the telly the other night about the rerun of the Redex trial.
Yeah, lovely time. 50 years since obviously the 1953 Redex trial, the first real big round Australia. It wasn't quite round Australia. It didn't get over to the west coast as much. It went more down through the centre. But fundamentally, a big event of motoring around the continent. Back in 1953.
And is it being rerun in some of those old cars?
Yes, it's probably now mainly bitumen and a nice gentleman of leisurely rate that it's going to be done at. So it's not going to be that mad, frantic bash drive all night sort of stuff that some of the early events were.
But they're going in older cars?
Yes, they are. Yes, in fact, they're pre-1970, so there's a fair range of them there. It's been put on by the Peugeot Car Company and the Peugeot Car Club of Victoria.
And they've traditionally done very well in the Redex trial,
well,
haven't
they won the 1953 event, Ken Tubman and John Marshall. And the incredible thing is that many people, when they've gone to Peugeot, have referred to that, even though they weren't born at the time. It has been a lasting impact on that company, or memory for that company, both not only in their own corporate history, but also in the public mind as well. It's incredible that it has achieved so much over such a long time.
Yes. And David, did they go off-road?
Oh, enormously. Oh, they went, they were bashing their way through the bull dust and right through, and of course, into the snow as well.
And these were cars that weren't four-wheel drive?
Oh, no, not at all. We're talking there about old Vanguards, VWs, Austins. A lot of Austins in there. Now, he was a bloke that went in an Austin. He had a lovely story one time. He was going to go with his cousin, who was the mechanic and knew everything, and so he and his uncle were going to go along, support and, as part of the car and driving to it. But at the last minute, the cousin pulled out with his Holden, so they put in their little Austin A40 Tourer. It was a convertible. And they went around Australia and that. I mean, it's amazing. And they did it on one set of tyres and they survived.
Isn't that amazing?
I think they came 278th or something or other. I mean, they weren't necessarily running at the front of the field, as serious as some might.
Oh, yeah.
But there were really some great stories, and I spoke a few years ago at one of the reunions with Tom Farrell, who worked for the Telegraph at that time. And he kept a typewriter on his knee and was submitting stories as they drove around in one of those great things. Can I play you one quick grab from him?
Okay, thanks.
It's just him talking about just how he saw some of the other competitors and what they had to do to keep going.
One of the Humber Super Snipe crews in northwest Australia, we came across them in a creek crossing, and they were sitting there patiently stuffing an empty tyre with grass, and one of the crew was patiently sawing a jack handle into short lengths because they thought that the stub axle, which had broken off, was about the same diameter they won't be able to fix the wheel back on using the part of the jack handle.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful bush mechanic sort of stuff?
Absolutely. Well, stuffing the tyre with grass.
That was used a lot back, with Model T Fords and things, but for it being used in the 50s, it was still an example of just how desperate and how they were out there in an adventure without huge service crews. If we did it today, much more corporate dollar, and it'd be much more sort of a business.
Oh, that's right. Isn't that fantastic? In the old Humber Super Snipe.
Humber Super Snipe.
David, lovely memories. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
David Brown, our independent motoring correspondent on 7:02 Breakfast, 8.5 minutes to 7.
Motoring history and automobile nostalgia comes alive today as the cars in the Peugeot Redex Reliability Trial Rerun arrive in Brisbane from the Gold Coast on their way around Australia. Matthew McCauley from Peugeot says Isla Marshall, the wife of the original Redex trial winner, John, will be at Perry Park as the cars roll in. He says it should be a great atmosphere.
Oh, exactly. In 1953, Perry Park was an actual control point for the original Redex reliability. So today, if people come down anywhere from 10 o'clock onwards, there'll be cars. Closer to 12, there'll be more cars waiting to be waved off. And Isla Marshall, she's also going to bring down the trophy from 1953, and that will be on display, as well as around 90 Peugeots.
Of course, as we heard Walt talk about, and Nicole Butler, today's a great day. If you've got a chance, head on out to Albert Park, because who can remember names like Gelignite Jack, Jack Davey, great names like that turned up in, when I was only a little tacker, my mum and dad, they thought it was fabulous. It was just brilliant stuff. I'm talking about the Redex trial, the reliability trial. The drivers were allowed 2 weeks to get some 11,000 kilometres. Well, this time around, they've put it all together. They headed off from Sydney in, I think it's back on the 22nd. Now all the cars are located at Perry Park here in Brisbane. And all the old Peugeots that used to be in it, they were a cracker of a car in it. Well, now they've extended the time to about 4 weeks. And I thought we'd take time out to talk to Matthew McCauley, who's the Public Relations Manager for the Peugeot Automobiles of Australia. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Oh, good afternoon. How are you?
What a fabulous thing you're doing. I think it's great. It's history. It's been part of Australia for years, the Redex trial, hasn't it?
Oh, look, it's amazing. And we've got a real bunch of committed Peugeot owners who thought I'd commemorate the 53 victory, as you just mentioned, by a Peugeot 203. And what better way to do it than actually retrace the steps that they took?
You've actually got some of the original people involved in it and some of the original cars, I believe, too.
Yeah, we do. We wanted to really make it a truly nostalgic event. So what we did is open it up to some of the competitors who took part in 53 and some of the vehicles that took part in that event as well. So we've got, or even people from overseas, as was mentioned in the news report, we've got 3 cars that have been brought over from Europe. And their crews to take part,
I think it's absolutely brilliant because they're grand old vehicles, and it was pretty hard in those days. Once you got off the bitumen, there was nothing, was there?
The conditions were absolutely terrible. Once you headed north and inland, really there were no roads. And I was having a look through the original instructions that the competitors were given in 53, and it was a page and a half.
That was the instructions?
That was it. It was just where the control points were, when you had to be there, and not like today where we've got maps for everything and GPS. They just had to make their own way, sometimes when there were no roads.
And of course there wasn't sort of like the backup services that are available today weren't there 50 years ago.
No, that's right. You're pretty much on your own.
So you get down to flat tyres and broken axles and you had to fix it yourself on the run?
That's right, exactly. Hopefully a fellow competitor would come past and give you a hand.
Yeah, just fix you up a little bit and then get going. Hey, you started off with 90 cars. How many you still got now that you've just arrived at Brisbane?
Oh, look, they're all still going. As you said, we set off from Fox Studios on Sunday, which was where the original 53 rally departed from.
Yeah, that would have been the old showgrounds or something, wouldn't it?
Exactly, the old showground. So we started there, had a really nice public send-off, and a couple of days later we're up in Brisbane, and of course we're heading all the way around Australia, about 11,000 k's in 4 weeks.
That's a fair hike.
It's a big hike.
Yeah, it's a fair jump in there. Who are some of the people that are taking part in it that really go back in the Redex trials?
Oh, look, we've got some competitors like Ken Harper, who competed in the first Porsche to come to Australia. He's here, not in a Porsche this time. He's in a Ford. We've got Des West, who also competed in the early days. He's actually driving a Peugeot 404. And another gentleman we have is Ted Hoy, who accompanied his father and his uncle in a Chrysler Airflow. And we've got that car, and Ted and some family members are also competing.
Unbelievable. I think it's great. How long are you going to be at Perry Park with the field?
Oh, look, we've been here since, I guess, mid-morning, and we've got the field parked here. They're heading off now. We've got a navigational event for all the teams to make their way through to Nambour, where we're stopping for the night.
Yeah.
And they're leaving now, so they'll probably be gone within the next hour.
Within the next hour. So if Brisbaneites want to relive a bit of history, they've got to get there with them now.
Exactly.
All right then, mate. I wish you well in it, and I thank you so much for sharing a bit of time with us, because it does go way back. Oh, before we go, I mentioned people like Gelignite Jack and Jack Davey. Yep. When I was a kid, I remember they took part in it. Any other famous people, apart from the obvious courageous drivers, that turned up in Redex trials over the 50 years?
Look, there's been a few. Unfortunately, Gelignite Jack's no longer with us.
No, of course.
We did have his car on display at the start. And, you know, we had some other entrants from 53 down at Fox Studios who aren't taking part with us.
No.
But, yeah, no, we've had some good support from the original entrants.
Where did Gelignite Jack get the name from?
Well, he had a unique method for clearing trees that might have fallen across the track.
Say no more.
And he wasn't afraid of letting some Gelignite go around towns to create a bit of interest as well.
They're legends, people like that, aren't they, Matthew?
Yeah, exactly. No,
all right, then, Matt. It's just another thing. Is it also going to be covered via television, or at least a video that we might be able to catch up on the whole thing later?
Yeah, well, look, we've got some people who are taking some vision, so we're working towards maybe a documentary at a future stage.
Oh, brilliant!
But what we've also got is on our website a special Redex, a Peugeot Redex rerun section.
Oh, brilliant! Where do we find that?
Well, it's www.peugeot.com.au.
Yeah.
And you can click through to the Redex section, and we've got all the background information, a lot of photos, and we'll have regular updates of the field, and as they make their way around Australia, a lot of images and even some little video shots as well.
I'll go straight to that as soon as I get off here.
Okay.
Matthew, thanks very much. Good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay then, Matthew. Thank you.
Okay,
bye-bye. Matthew McCauley, Public Relations Manager for the Peugeot Automobiles of Australia. And as Matthew said, it's, 17 past 12 now. You've probably got about 60 minutes before they all disappear and head off to Nambour. And for our listeners and viewers on Sunshine Coast, they'll be at the Nambour Showgrounds later on this afternoon. A little navigational thing. They'll wind up through the forest and what have you, up around Beerburrum, and then they'll wind up at, of course, the Nambour Showgrounds. So go and have a look at it. 90 cars in all. The 50th anniversary of the Redex trial. If you can remember the Redex trial and some funny things that happened out, did it come near you? I know in those days there was very little television. Movie Tone News was all you caught up with the pictures on. But when I was a kid, it was a must to listen to. And my old man, he used to love it. It's 18 past 12. My number's 1332. Let's have a chat.
Let's cast your mind back 50 years ago. It wasn't the sort of thing you'd do back then. That was jump in your car and drive around Australia. Or more to the point, race around Australia. But back in 1953 was the first Redex rally, which saw cars of all shapes and sizes taking on the Outback to see which one was the most reliable and was able to get from A to B. It's all been done again, 50 years on, and it's been organised by the Peugeot Car Club owners, because the Peugeot won that first Redex rally back then. And to tell us all about the recreation, we're joined by Matthew McCauley, who's on the line. Good morning, Matthew. You're in Maitland.
Yes, good morning. We're in Maitland after our first day.
Now, tell me, back in 53, what sort of conditions were people expected to put up with, given that the roads back then would have been pretty shocking?
Yeah, the roads were quite ordinary. I guess once the field got past Brisbane, the roads were really tracks, and they had to make their way right up to Townsville. Once they turned left to head towards Darwin, basically there were no given roads. There were probably stockman's tracks and some pretty rough conditions, and they just sort of headed in a general direction as best they could.
Now, the other interesting thing about this is, in those days, no one else had done this before. Today, well, every grey nomad and every other tourist drives around Australia, backpackers, all sorts of people. But in those days, this was very uncommon, wasn't it?
Oh, it was uncommon. I think the 53 Redex rally really spawned a whole multitude of other around Australia events which took place, I guess, right up until the late 70s, and even today a lot of variety club bashers follow the route right around the nation. And before this one, they'd had quite a lot of local rallies in different states, which were maybe 1,000 kilometres or so, but this was the first ever attempt on such a grand scale.
Now, you've got 90 cars who've headed out from Sydney yesterday. That you're actually heading, well, right around the spot. How many k's do you expect to cover over the next month?
Oh, look, it's about 11,500 kilometres, so it's a fair distance. And yeah, we set off from Fox Studios yesterday, which was the original starting point 50 years ago. So we had the whole field there, 90 cars, and again, the original competitors remember it as a paddock, not as Fox Studios.
I was about to say it would have been quite different from 50 years ago. Now, you headed to Maitland. You've got cars which are of that vintage. Are they all sort of 1953 vintage, these cars?
Yeah, most of them are. We've got a lot of... There's a Peugeot 203 which won the original event, so they're obviously well represented. Then we've got some other models which are late 50s, going up to about mid-60s, and even have a few non-Peugeot entrants which are representative of the other cars that competed in the original rallies.
Sacre bleu, no Peugeots. Tell us, the Peugeot would have been a very, I would have thought, unlikely winner. People would have predicted something maybe a bit more robust, maybe a bit bigger would have been the 1953 winner.
Well, that is right, and Ken Tubman and John Marshall, his co-driver, they were ranked as 100 to 1 by the bookies, so they're probably underdogs. And most people thought that to take on the conditions in the outback especially, you probably needed a larger, more powerful car. But I guess I underestimated the Peugeot 203 because it was a smaller car, it was lighter, probably handled a little bit better than the larger cars and coped with the rough stuff better than the others.
So are they good in the sand? Because as you said, they'll be lighter and able to sort of drive over the top, as it were, rather than maybe bogging down like some of those larger cars.
Oh, exactly. That's right. They could just float across the top pretty much, and being a bit more nimble, I think one of the things that served them well was the fact they could manoeuvre well, because unexpected potholes and wildlife jumping out was probably the main factor that led to the attrition of the cars.
What, hitting roos and cattle?
Well, exactly, and cattle grids and the like.
Tell me, you've actually got 6 contestants from the original race there. Are they racing as well, or are they just along for the ride, sort of sitting in the back seat looking at the countryside?
Yeah, given it's 50 years on, I think the spirit is still there, but potentially mainly they're navigating. And for example, we've got Jack Cherry, who competed in the original event. He's here along with his son, and as I said, Ken Allman, who did drive the Peugeot in 1953, is also along, but he's mainly a backseat driver. But they're really adding to the nostalgic appeal of the event.
Back in those days, in the original run, drivers drove from checkpoint to checkpoint, but it didn't matter how they got from point to point. They had to find the best way, or in their mind, the best way there. Is that the same with this run?
Well, no. I think given the fact that now we're on major highways, we've got some pretty detailed instructions for our competitors. There are some variations as to which way they can go, but we have control points every day. It's registered with CAMS as a road touring event, so while we're on the highways, of course, we're running in a responsible fashion, but we have events such as hill climbs or motorcanas or timed laps when we're off-road at circuits or private property. And we've got 3 books for our competitors. In 1953, we actually reprinted this for our competitors. They had 1.5 pages of instructions, and that was it. They were just told where the checkpoints were, and this is when you need to be there, and off you go.
You're on your own.
You're on your own.
What's the roughest bit of the drive you're going to do in this time round? You'll be in the Territory, I think, from early July. July 2, I think you cross the border from Isa to Tennant. Are you going off-road around the Territory?
We're pretty much on the main roads. The area that we're going to head off-road is more down towards the Unadilla track. There are a couple of cars, probably about 12, which are going to head and take a trip out to the Dalhousie Springs. So that's probably one of the roughest sections that these guys will have to face.
Some nice stony roads down there, so you'll have fun there, mate.
Yes, excellent.
Well, we'll see you when you come to the Territory. You'll be from July 2, you drive to Tennant and go up to Catherine to Darwin, then down again to Alice, then on to Unadilla.
Exactly.
Well, have a good run and have a safe run.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's Matt McCauley, and he's one of the organisers of that 50th anniversary for the Redex run. And the Peugeots seem to be the ones who were favoured because, of course, back in 1953, the Peugeot won the event. Unlikely, I would have thought. But then again, back in, was it 67, 68, a Hillman Hunter won the rally between London and Sydney. And come on, a Hillman Hunter, that's what my grandma used to drive.